Good morning, New Zealand. Hi, Mom. Is Dad joining? All right. Great, great, great. Let me just send a reminder to everybody. Morning, Kalpana. Wonderful to have you on. All right, it is 7 a.m. Just going to give it another minute. Bear with me. I'm just going to grab something very quickly.
Good morning.
All right, back. Kalpana, wonderful to have you on the call and to have Mom as well dialing in from New Zealand. We missed you on our trek yesterday and had a phenomenal, amazing day. We had a trek with about 30 people. We did Maidenhead to Marlow. The weather was beautiful. You absolutely would enjoy these treks, and I highly recommend coming. Jag,
I will.
we missed you on the trek yesterday as well, and we did Sunday treks hoping that Jag's gonna make it with Dia not having any piano classes, and we missed not seeing you there either. Beautiful day. So many kids under the age of 10. I was like, Princess would have loved this. Warm day along the river. We found a nice patch where everybody just jumped into the water. It was crystal clear. And so missed it. Snake, good morning. Fantastic to see you yesterday. Hope the legs are healing and doing really well. It was so great that you could make it with all the busyness and all the things happening at family's end. So big kudos to you guys. So good morning, ladies. Love how we're really getting girl power on these calls, which is not to say guys can't join. Absolutely, everybody welcome. And I'm just noticing a trend, just saying hashtag how women are absolutely rocking the house on these calls. All right, guys. So continuing and building on our life. You know, I'm loving this topic because the more I'm practicing, the more I'm creating notes, the more I'm studying on this whole area of the 5 pillars of our life. It's getting me so present. How I'm living, how I'm choosing to take the actions, how I'm building the relationships around me on a day-to-day basis. And so delving in further on our third pillar, which is connecting with family. Firstly, thank God it's Monday. Whoop, whoop. Absolutely love the space we're in. And Ronnie created a fun hashtag, which was, you know how we talk about disrupting Monday morning blues? Well, let's call this Monday Morning Greens, and really aligned with green, healthy, FITBANKER theme, because that's really the space we want you guys to stand in. Jump out of bed, looking as fresh as ever, knowing you own life. Now, moving on to family. What do we mean by family? Over here, we're really going to cover 3 different contexts of family. One is that which we are born into. The second is that which we find for ourselves or is found for us through partnerships and or marriage. And the third is those we choose as family. For the purpose of this call, we're going to focus on the first 2. The ones we're born into, and that which we find or is found for us through partnership or marriage. Next week's call, which is connecting with the community, will focus on the third aspect, which is those which we choose as family. Now, our
Sorry,
first
Ambika, it's a lot of
ever
interference.
in our existence are our parents. And our every action as kids, the age of Kanaya, the age of Princess. Snake's kids are grown up now. But, from a very young onset, they're constantly doing actions aligned with just two intentions: to seek the love and approval of the parents as young beings. And from generations ago, from multiple generations, I'm not talking about just new discovery amongst us, but from multiple generations, parents equally try to find within their way of parenting a validation of their own self-worth. So right from the onset, children start to get molded around the mindsets of parents as per their own upbringing, society accepted ways, competitive cultures, kept away and protected from taboos. And before you know it, a fully self-expressed being like Kanea is right now, who knows to love unconditionally, gets shaped and molded into a limited being that walks, talks, behaves, makes life choices to eventually either continue to please the parents, and then in later years engages with likewise families, friends, that there's constantly a pleasing approach, or the other end of the spectrum, which is to rebel and take actions on self-sabotage from years of overimposing discipline and suppression in some form or the other. Either way, whichever space you stand in, whether it is constantly being the real good one who will constantly please the parents, as a firstborn, I can absolutely relate to that. Or in the other spectrum where you're just done with years of just overimposing, and then you become quite rebellious as your default way of being. Either way, whatever path you choose, what gets created is a human being bound by his or her past and relating to his or her family in some sort of imbalanced love-hate relationship. You love them and then you hate them, and then you love them and then you hate them. And it's constantly penduluming between that state. So that's our relationship with family that we are born into. If we move into the second piece, which is marriage or partnerships, we get sold a narrative of a happily ever after. We get sold that through fairy tales that we read growing up, through storybooks that we read growing up, through movies that we watch, through TV, through media. And it's a huge topic in itself. So I'm actually going to cover this separately. But briefly, it recently dawned on me that that narrative sells us short. Because A, we think getting married is a goal, it's a destination. And once we're there, then all efforts can be dropped with the assumption that that person will be around forever, which is not true at all. And a relationship, what we're not taught is a relationship like anything, whether it's your health, whether it's your finances, has to be invested in to see it grow. The grass is not greener on the other side. It's greenest where you water it. Water your grass. That's what your motto, that's what your takeaway is. And I'll do a Facebook Live this evening on how weddings as an event, as a build-up to something, truly set us up for failure, and they rob us of that happily ever after narrative. So stay tuned on that. But those are the two aspects really want us to look at in terms of how do we connect with the family we're born into, and then how do we connect with the relationships we choose and create through marriage or partnership. So delving a bit deeper on the topic, which is how to connect with family, I want to look at three different aspects. So the first is, or three different steps or ideas or suggestions. The first is, when we talk about water your garden, what does that actually look like? I'm doing, and Jag is on that as well, I'm doing this year-long Genius Coaching Program with Jay Shetty, which is covering the topic on wealth. And when I often think of wealth, growing up, wealth is talked about in the context of finances. And I love that Jay expands it and talks about wealth as a space of abundance and freedom. What gives us access to that freedom? And what I distinguish doing that particular topic, coaching on that program, reflecting, studying more on the topic, is when I distinguish my rich list, often and I'm working in a space of business development. I'm working in an organization which is raising philanthropy, that we invest in entrepreneurs. My entire role in business development is raising that philanthropy. So when I'm thinking of rich lists of, philanthropists out there that may be interested in partnering in our organization, a rich list is very much defined by people's financial ability. So it's a sum total, a tally of the money they have, the financial assets they have. What's brilliant is, morning Linglin, what's brilliant is I got a new definition through the Genius Coaching Program around rich lists, or wealth list rather. Not rich list, sorry, wealth list. And my wealth list is not that which is a sum total of my money and financial assets, but it's that which money cannot buy. And it's fascinating because when I started creating my wealth list, I recognized and realized very quickly that what's on my wealth list is all my irreplaceable relationships. So parents who live together, who are alive and love each other deeply. A brother whose highest value is serving family. An amazing husband who's committed to and goddamn brings out the best in me always. That's his commitment. A bloody awesome loving son who's just the epitome of love, who's generous, who's kind, who's giving. Friends to die for. Growing authentic bonds and networks continuously through FITBANKER, through self-discovery journeys that we're on, whether it's with programs like Landmark, spiritual discourses like Chinmay Mission, through Jay's coaching program, through the whole FITBANKER community, legends who are up to constantly being the better version of themselves. Had our FITBANKER trek yesterday, Ling Ling was on it, Sneh was on it, people who bring their families, their friends, their peers to really let's create a new way of socializing that really has us bring our optimal health, nothing's being compromised, and deeper bonds are being connected. Those kind of authentic relationships, gosh, that's one of my highest on my wealth list. A space where I get to be connected to global catalysts, to educators whose commitment purely is to bring out the best in others. Ronnie, Jay Shetty, my founder of the organization I work with, Jacqueline Novogratz, a real commitment to change the way the world tackles poverty. Seth Godin, big, he's an author. He's written so many books that really have us get, how do we create tribes? How can we be an indispensable linchpin in whatever space we're in? What is a mindset that has us constantly bring out the best within ourselves? An incredible neighborhood, people who are constantly watching each other's backs. Family that love and shower me with affection limitlessly. And that was just around relationships. And then I had a wealth list around everything else, around my health and everything else that I think I'm eternally grateful for. But I've never really considered it as my wealth list. If we were to create a Forbes magazine on each of us listing what our wealth list was, everything that money cannot buy, I promise you, you'll be blown away by how much of a role family plays in there. So here's an exercise for each of you guys. Create your wealth list. And for those of you on Jay's coaching program, you've probably already done this. Those of you in other aspects of life that have heard of the notion, you've probably done this. And I invite you to do it again, to really get present to, in the context of family, with the two pillars we're looking at today. That which you're born into and that which you've chosen and created around partnerships and marriage. What is your wealth list there? So that's the first action request for you guys. The second one around how to connect with family is let go of comparisons. We have grown up into a world around comparisons. I remember growing up as a kid, always being compared to the smartest kid out there in our community. That person's kid studies so hard. That person's kid gets first or second in their class. That family member does this or that family member does that. Very subconsciously, that's just the way we've learned to communicate with one another. That's the language tools that we're kind of inherited into. And then those get pulled out all the time. And if that wasn't imposing enough, now we have social media to impose it on ourselves. Constant comparisons. And social media often has people share their achievements. And here's what's so warped is that we then take somebody's best moments to compare it to our worst moments, only to beat ourselves even harder. I want you guys to consider you have no idea of the challenges other people face. It will only be the very courageous, very bold that will share their breakdowns out there on social media in order to A, seek support, and B, to be an inspiration and source of access for another person. But often, and that's probably 0.0001% that will be sharing vulnerably out there. Most of us share our happy moments out there with others. We share our accomplishments. We share the moments that give us joy, that bring a smile to our face. And yet we use that as a comparison. Look at that person's family. Look how happy they look. I'm not in that space. Look at what they're doing. Look at what they're accomplishing. Look at how they're growing. Look at the love. All those assumptions we make based off of social media, those comparisons are absolutely paralyzing. They're self-sabotage. They really have us regress rather than progress because we're not getting to stand in our greatest asset, which is, again, our own wealth list. So you create how you want your happy moments to look like with your family. You break free of the traditions that don't serve you, that don't allow you to grow. Get over your comparisons, right? It's never a comparison of you versus them. It's always a comparison of you versus you. Because in your mind, you should be somewhere you're not. Your family should be somewhere they're not. Get over that. Again, it's all created up here in your mind. And when you get that, you can create your family to be however you want them to be and start new norms, then the options are limitless. My favorite story and example to share over here, about 3 years ago, Ronnie and I were doing a 7-month program called Introduction Leaders Program with Landmark. Phenomenal, incredible experience journey where you get to peel away in the most confronting way everything that is not you, identities that we get created and we build from years and years and years and years of conditioning. And they're fine because they serve us well. We're doing well professionally. We're doing well in every aspect of our life, or so we think. We have no idea how self-limiting they are. And when we start, when the spotlight shines on them, the unworkability around them just gets magnified a multiple fold. And in that space, there's such discomfort. If you picture, little molecules in a jar that are heated and the molecules are going all bonkers and banging against the wall, that's kind of what happens to our identity. It gets so uncomfortable. And in that space, in the coaching, in the tools and distinctions and education, you kind of then pop the lid of that jar, emerge and grow beyond what you ever thought was possible, letting go of everything that isn't you, shedding all those identities that we create to protect ourselves from the world growing up. And you just emerge as a self-expressed leader, as a self-expressed being. And that was our experience. And so much gets created, so many new norms get created. And one of the actions Ronnie took was creating a call with his family every Sunday morning, a gratitude call. So neither Ronnie nor I live with our immediate family on the same continent. My parents are in New Zealand. They're dialed in on these calls, as you guys always know. My brother's in New Zealand as well. Ronnie's family, his parents are in Zambia. Another brother is in Zambia as well. They live separately, different parts. And then another brother is in Australia. So I speak to my parents, daily, almost daily, whereas Ronnie's calls would be very infrequent. Through that leadership program, we really got so present to how we can create a different way of connecting with family. Introduce the concept of these family weekly calls and call them gratitude calls. Jump on the call and everybody share 3 things you're grateful for. And the concept and the notion was absolutely bizarre for the family. It started off with tons of resistance. And I got on the first call and everybody, the siblings were like, this is so lame. who does this. The whole conversation around gratitude was awkward because we're not taught as a default to be grateful for things. And eventually, what was uncomfortable, awkward, almost weird to be on those calls, and the conversations felt so forced and imposed. By being consistent, by persevering, by being resilient and standing in the greater why, that this is going to allow the family to bond. 3 years on, those calls are unmissable. Everybody dials in on the calls. In fact, his brothers are the ones that are the first ones dialing in. His dad's the first one dialing in. And we just share what's happened over the week. And the gratitude conversations have just gone from random things like, I'm grateful for myself. There you go, 3 things done. Boom, next person. To actually getting into deep, rich conversations where one gets to open themselves up and we get to discover each other in a whole new light. So you create how you choose your family to be. Get over feeling like you're handed something that doesn't work for you, that you don't like, that you would wish it to be another way. All right? So that's your second thing, let go of comparisons. And the third is something that I'm getting more and more present to, and I'm going to cover this on the live today as well, which is so profound. When you get connected to the concept that each of us are actually connected through one spiritual energy, through one being, which is a divine force, then you start to get minuscule access to a divine vision, which is the ability to see the depth and width within which we're all connected as one. But then you start to embrace and even get your head in a framework around that special knowledge of what having a divine vision looks like. So what does that even mean, right? That may sound completely over the top for most of us. But all that's simply saying, when I let go of looking at Kalpana, looking at Jag, Ronnie, Ling Ling, Sneh, my parents on the call, and others as, simply the identities you've given yourself, the way you define yourself, the way I think you are, if I peel away all those layers and get that who you truly are, who I truly am, is a divine being, and connect to your divinity and see you as nothing other than this limitless divine force that resides within me as well, like oceans, like waves in an ocean, right? There's the ocean and the waves separate, go to the shore, and then head back. That's precisely the energy in the space that connects each and every one of us. We may have branched away or floated away, created our own independent waves, but then we all swim back, come back into the source of our existence, which is our divine being. And when we see each other's divinity, I promise you, nothing's left in that space other than love. Nothing's left in that space other than creativity, compassion, love, because you get to see someone beyond the labels they've given themselves and the labels you've given them. You get to see the oneness in each other. So that's your third aspect. And this is a much bigger topic, and I'm going to touch on it on the live today in Facebook later this evening, more so around marriages and relationships. But for now, the 3 steps I want to leave you guys with how to connect with family really is, first, as a recap, it is create your wealth list. And your wealth list is everything that money cannot buy. Your wealth list around relationships. Second is let go of comparisons. And most of the comparisons, yes, they're often society driven, but really are absolutely self-imposed. And the third is get connected to the divinity amongst each of us. See the divinity in your parents, see the divinity in your siblings, in your wider relationships that you've created through marriage, through partnerships, cousins, aunts, uncles. Really get connected to everybody's greatness. And therein, you'll find a space of love, compassion, empathy, where service and contribution become the norm. So on that note, guys, I'm going to have you guys unmute all the calls and share, what are you getting present to? What are you hearing for yourself around what it is to connect with family?
Morning, Ambi.
Morning, Jag.
Sorry, took a bit of a bath. I haven't even washed my face yet.
That's perfect.
So
I see the divinity in you, and you look beautiful.
thank you. Yeah, so I think, just the way you're saying, okay, looking at people from that point, I think when you don't look at yourself that way, it does make it, because as soon as you said that, the resistance was, I struggled to do that myself. But it's probably not even a way I've thought of before. So I like it because it just takes it away from anything really. There's no, like, it takes you away from comparing them, what they should be like, or whatever, just accepting, well, they're on this planet as a divine being, and just take it from there and give them that respect for being, like, sort of that privilege of being here, even, like, like, let's just appreciate, honor that sort of thing. And then so I quite like that. And in the gratitude calls, like you were saying, so would that be just like 3 actual anything like that you're grateful for?
Say that again,
Ronnie does, for example.
Jack.
So Ronnie does the gratitude call. Can you hear me?
It's literally absolutely anything. So it's, all right, Mom, what are 3 things you're grateful for this week? And then she'll say something, and then Dad will say something. And often while they're saying the 3 things, the conversation get, digress into some bigger topic. Then you kind of wheel them back and say, what are 3 things you're grateful for? And initially they were just so uncomfortable.
Okay, cool.
And we'd find the most lamest thing to kind of just brush up the topic and go to the next. And somewhere over the years, that shift has happened where people just...
And it just takes you away from all that normal...
Small talk, which is, just to fill the space. Hi, how are you doing? How's work? How's everything else? All good, blah, blah, blah. All right, great. It takes you away from that conversation to a real deep connection.
Yeah. And I think that's it. Ultimately, we've sort of lost that connection, and that's a good way to looking at them as a divine person, like a divine being. Gives you another way to connect to them. And I think that's what I've been struggling with recently, actually, that, to be able to have a conversation without someone talking about someone, or someone doing, saying something about this person, and I'll be like, no, I don't want to talk about that. What about this? And I have to keep on redirecting conversations because I don't want to have that small talk. So I do definitely like that concept. Yeah, definitely.
Great.
Yeah, it's nice. I like what you said there. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jack. And to your point about, it's hard for us to see the divinity in others, to connect, or even think about how to connect with family when we can't connect with ourselves or don't see ourselves that way. And I want to and remind others who were or even weren't on the call, when we looked at connecting with the self last week, the 3 key steps, I think, for us to really get connected to ourselves is, one is when you're acknowledged, when somebody says thank you to you or acknowledges you for something, say thank you. Get connected to that acknowledgement rather than shying away from it. That simple step is so profound, and Jack, the more you start doing that, in your business, the more you do it as a mom, the more you do it as a wife, you're a leader out there constantly, up for bettering yourself. Through Yes Group, through FITBANKER, you're just such a powerful force to reckon with, because you're constantly standing to better others and yourself. And when people acknowledge you, say thank you and zip it and allow it to sink in. Great. The second one is, we're not looking for the one. Each of us get that you are the one that you're looking for. You are the one that's going to be making the difference to you. There's no one out there that's the one that's going to come and transform your life. You're it. And the third is, who you are is infinite self. And when we get that we're the infinite self, all the limiting beliefs of I can or can't do this, or should and shouldn't do this because, kind of disappears, because you just get you're creating it. When we connect to ourselves, it gives us access to connect with others, which is what we're covering on this call. So thanks a lot for touching on that, Jag. It was a really rich takeaway, because it also got us to look at last week's takeaway. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we probably have time for one more person to share. What are you hearing for yourself from today's call, and how to connect with family? Thoughts, question, ideas, ahas, takeaways. What new actions are showing up? Of course, beyond creating your own wealth lists. Snay, Ling Ling, Ronnie, some iPhone users. Kalpana, I know you're on the bus. If you can share, feel free to do so. You might inspire others sat next to you too.
Right, Ambika.
Hey,
Can
go
you
for
hear
it.
me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might need one-to-one coaching on this one because I have a large family, 5 sisters and 1 brother
Mhm.
who I love deeply but feel quite broken.
Right.
So the relationships don't really work. I'm close to 3 or 4 of my sisters, but 2 of them I hardly see or speak to. And my brother, who I adore, I see him maybe just a couple of times a year for Rakhi Day. And he lives in London. And I wish I could see him a lot more, but I just don't. I feel that my sister-in-law controls all his movements, and I have to see my own brother via my sister-in-law and make arrangements through her. And I can hardly ever call my brother direct. So, being an Indian Gujarati family, I just want, and every time from the past they'll say, "Oh God, she's trouble," or it's become like my second name, and I think, oh, here we go. Just because I speak the truth or I'm blunt, I'm always getting into trouble. So anyway, that's my share. I need coaching on this one. Sorry, I'll mute myself. I'm on the streets now. Thanks.
Thanks, Kalpana. So more than happy to connect separately and have a one-on-one coaching call on this. The 2 things I want to give you access to is our way of relating to others is always, without any exception, stemming from our way of connecting to ourselves. How you relate to others is how you relate to yourself. And it may seem almost counterintuitive or paradoxical because we have so much evidence about how others are or aren't and how their actions cause us grief. And I promise you, the more we start looking into who are we for ourselves, what's our narrative of ourselves, we start to see that as the mind, so the world. Whatever's showing up here within ourselves is how the world shows up out there. And so, Kalpana, let's definitely connect more on this and, schedule a call. But for now, I really want you to start looking at what's going on here within you that has the world show up in a certain way. All right. And thank you so much for sharing that so vulnerably, because I can hear in your voice there's pain and there's upset and sadness there. So thanks a lot for sharing that. And for everybody else, a massive thank you for dialing in. Acknowledge we are 2 minutes over. This, again, really standing in a space of just not tolerating life, coming, powerfully creating the life that you choose for yourself. So thank you for your generous listening. Thank you for your partnership, sharing, contribution to one another. Big hugs. Next week, we're going to look at the pillar of connecting with community. Definitely join in. And we're going to have a live today, which is going to be around marriage and wedding. So connect with you guys on that. Big hugs. Lots of love, guys.
All right, thanks.
Week.
Thank you.
Thanks, somebody. Bye.